And so first up, we have Denise Bynum. Denise began as a volunteer trapper and transporter for Homeless Animal Relief Project, or HARP, in 2019. After her retirement from Northwest Mississippi Community College in 2020, she started answering the client calls for assistance and making appointments for HARP. She was a nursing instructor at Northwest Mississippi Community College in Senatobia, Mississippi for 28 years, serving as director of the RN program for the last 6 years before her retirement in 2020. She currently teaches part-time for Christian Brothers University in Memphis, Tennessee. She became the director of HARP in July 2021. And then Linda, who you'll also hear from, Miss Linda Chitwood, founded Homeless Animals Relief Project in 1997 in response to the overpopulation of cats and dogs in rural North Mississippi. HARP has provided low-cost or free spay-neuter care to over 20,000 cats and dogs living with the poor since then. The recipient of the Annie Lee Roberts Courage and Compassion Award, Linda has nearly 30 years of experience in pet welfare and spay-neuter advocacy. She is also the author of $5 for a Cat Head, a book filled with hands-on tips for helping animals and getting started in spay-neuter. She retired as the volunteer director of HARP in 2022, but remains on the board and active in spay neuter. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and I can't wait to hear from Denise and Linda.
Hello, everyone. This is Linda here, and I want to thank you all for coming and sticking it out. I know you have choices of other things you can do on a Sunday afternoon, but spay neuter is so important as a sustainable solution to the suffering that so many of the overpopulated pets are feeling in the United States. We are a tiny nonprofit, small, all volunteer group. So our talk on succession and contingency planning is going to be directed at small groups, like most of you probably are, TNR groups, that sort of thing. Big organizations with big budgets can afford a succession consultant and a headhunter, but most of us on this conference cannot. So we're going to talk about how to plan, as Bree said, and thank you, Bree, for the introduction. We're going to talk about how to plan once you've built this up. And we've been at this I've been at this for 30 years. Once you built it up, you don't want to see it fail. You don't want to see it losses in your gains. So we'll focus on what small groups can do to plan for succession. In 2020, I decided after 25 years that it was time, and I'm getting on in years myself, that it was time to start looking to see if we could find a successor. And I lined up identified three women who were active in animal welfare. Denise was one of them, and two others, and we met several times, telephone conferences, other sort of meetings to try and plan this handover and this transition. Two of those other women dropped out pretty quickly. So you need to plan for that. You need to know that people are going to change their minds, or they're going to find out, no, it really wasn't what they wanted to do, or life circumstances are going to interfere. Our talk is really just going to focus on the choices in your plans for succession and contingency. Even if you don't have an aging leader like HARP does, like me, you still need a succession and planning plan, because bad things do happen. Unexpected things do happen. And we've experienced most of those in our 30 years. I mean, we've had, thankfully, mostly on a smaller scale, a fire in the spay neuter clinic. We've had power failures more than once. We've had a torrential flooding downpour during a spay day. We've had the sudden death of a volunteer just a few days before a big, huge spay day. So if you haven't planned for those things, you could really be in trouble. And who's going to lose the most is going to be the cats or the pets that you're trying to help. It is a difficult process. It is a lot of work. There will be a lot of starting and stopping and regrouping and deciding what to do next. But there is also a very, very big upside. Think of the possibilities of the opportunities that you have as you look for new leadership, get some fresh blood, some fresh ideas, some fresh energy in your organization. So I'm going to turn it over to Denise and let her talk to you about what succession and contingency planning is. And then I think the last 15 minutes we have planned for questions and answers. Denise, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Linda. And thanks to United Spay Alliance for asking us to speak and share our experience with succession
Absolutely.
and contingency planning. So it is two different, we'll be going back and forth on succession planning and contingency planning as we go along. So what would happen if your leader was unable to lead your nonprofit? You don't want your mission to falter or to disband. But think about it, could become even stronger, like Linda said. How are you going to handle this transition? Have you planned for the retirement, which you would have hopefully some time to plan for that? But what about an unexpected illness or death of a leader, or like Linda said, a key volunteer? Also, for contingency, have you planned for a weather crisis or some other kind of disaster? So our first objective, understand the critical need to formulate a plan for untoward events and loss of or changes to leadership. And we have some poll questions to ask about your personal, do you have a will or advanced healthcare directive? And we have about 3 poll questions. Bree?
Absolutely. Okay. I'm pulling those up right now. And so first, hopefully I have these in the right order for you. All right. So do you have a personal will and advance directive for healthcare? Yes, no, working on it. All right, go ahead and click on your screens, a personal will and advance directive for healthcare. I'm going to give you some time to click your answers in. All right, I'm going to close this poll down in 3, 2, 1. Final answers and close. Looks like 36% said yes, 29% said no, and 36% said working on it.
Okay. Well, if you have a personal will and advance directive for healthcare, you're planning for some kind of event, for the future. Okay, the next question.
All righty. Sorry, I'm hoping I'm making sure that these are in the right order. Okay, and launch. Does your nonprofit have a written contingency plan for disasters? Fire, power failure, storms, flood? Yes, no, or working on it. This is very important. Does your nonprofit have a written contingency plan? So not just we think we know what we do. That's something.
Right.
Those procedures written down. All right. Going to give everyone a few more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and close. All right, let's see those answers. 8% of you said yes. Congratulations to that 8%.
Yeah. Oh, 81%. No, that's worrisome.
And we have a 12% that's working on it, so that, step in the positive
That's a
direction.
start.
Well, after today, I bet we have more working on it.
I hope so. And I know it's one more thing to add to your to-do list, but it's so important for the future of your organization and for the animals.
And I will say, if anyone has any questions, you could reach us. You can look at our website and you could reach us and ask a question after the conference.
Yeah.
So as far as succession planning, so many of you are working on it. I hope you learned something today that can help you. You want your operations to continue and your mission to continue. It's critical for everyone, but especially if you're a small nonprofit. You want to focus that on your key positions also. Contingency planning builds resilience, and this is critical if you have animals in your care, even for a short time, even for the night before, the night after surgery. Also, grants have started asking for contingency plan for disasters. and they'll ask very specific questions about that. So you don't want to be on a deadline to write a grant and then you don't have a plan that you've thought about. So that's just one more thing you can get out of the way. So you're going to plan for these untoward events or disasters or the loss of or change of leadership. You want to start well in advance. If it's something that you know is coming up, it'll definitely take longer than you think. Start with that trigger for succession and work backward. Who has talent on board now? Who will need time to develop skills? I know Linda was watching for a long time to try to find a volunteer she thought would have those skills.
I did, that's true. And you just have to start even now, just kind of think, even if you're 10 years from thinking you'll quit, but you need it for your contingency planning also. Who could the cats call on to lead, in the event that this person was gone?
I know Linda, as she was bringing me into the organization to go to Spay Day and help or transport, she found out that I was retiring from my full-time nursing job. So she kept that in the back of her mind.
And on that, launched right in with my talons out.
So identify the strengths and weakness in your organization, address those now, like you're needing a succession plan or a contingency plan. Always be working on those so you can strengthen those before you have a new leader come in. Like this quote says, investing in potential emerging leaders is an ongoing process that should not be preserved for imminent departures.
You look at, you find somebody, a volunteer who has potential or you think really is in line with your mission and could work out, hone in on them and start on them soon, sounding them out. It might be that you don't know that their husband's going to be planning to be transferred in 6 months or a year. But you need to go start sounding people out now to see where they could be with you in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, 10 years.
I think Linda, she started out with me transporting, helping with Spay Day, and I think she saw
Yes.
that I had a passion for that.
Yes.
Yes. So start early. Remember, it's not a one-time event, but a process that could take a year or longer. Identify those key positions, write down your potential candidates, communicate with your stakeholders, your board of directors, vets, donors, volunteers, about your plan. And then about contingency planning, you would start there is ask the question, what would we do if something happened? What would we do if we had a fire, as Linda said, a flood, a tornado? What is the risk in your area? Each one of our, wherever we live, we have different risks. Some we have the same. And I'm going to show you our risk that we found on a website you can use, climatecheck.com. Some of these events have a warning, others may not, and I'll go over those. Review factors out of your control, make a plan to address these issues, and keeping in mind sometimes the owner is the one who's impacted. Maybe they're unable to pick up their cat because their area was flooded or they had a fire or a power failure. Maybe they're not able to provide a safe climate controlled environment before or after surgery. And we have that even if they don't have some type of disaster. They have nowhere to hold the cats the night before surgery except outside, and that not being acceptable, we have to have a plan for them. Cross-train your volunteers. Some of you may have employees, but we only have volunteers. But cross-train them now to fill in during emergency. Maybe they'll need to stay at the vet clinic and help if there's a power failure or fire or something at clinic. Maybe they'll need to jump in and answer calls, make appointments, transport the cats. Have a continuity of operations plan, and here's some worksheets you can find at this website. I'll show you an example of one there. And all of these resources are at the end of our presentation. with the websites.
That, Denise, that disaster planning for nonprofits was a good site. It had a number of free resources that were very good, and it also offered paid consultation, but you could get, like, this is one of their, you could get your plans from them pretty easily.
It just isn't in our budget, right?
Right.
Okay, this is the North Mississippi. When I put in my zip code, this is what they said. We had extreme risk for storms, severe storms, tornadoes, that kind of thing. Also heat, extreme heat. We added extreme cold because we do have temperatures at different times of the year that our cats would not be safe to be even in the garage at that temperature before and after surgery. Of course, low risk for flood, fire, and drought. Flood, we know you may not have a risk, but it could happen, as we've seen in recent event.
Yeah, and one time we had a mobile unit and we were headed to a lady's house with 30 cats that we were going to fix. It had rained the night before. We could not get across the road. Running water across the road, we could not get the trailer across the road or anything. So you got to be prepared for those sort of contingency. That climate check is an easy place. You just type that in and your zip code, and they'll tell you what risk you have.
Right. So also utilize your local and state emergency management agencies. You can see here our Mississippi agency and also our local county agency. And I was glad to find out they have planning for pets in these websites, how to prepare for various disasters, supply kit recommendations, evacuation planning. It has locations of shelters, power outage information, weather tracking. So you can get prepared for various disasters. That code red weather warning is our local text alert. So sign up for all those different warnings. Also power outage. I know I'm signed up for our local power Entergy that will tell me I have had a power outage even when I'm not at home, and what time they expect it to come back up, which is pretty accurate. So that's helpful. And this is examples on our Mississippi agencies, some good information that you'll find. It's just a couple of examples. And also, like I said, they include pets, but I found on CDC a pet disaster kit. This would be very helpful for your personal pets, but also use this, and you may need to add some additional supplies. I'll show you our list for emergency preparedness for the cats we might be housing. So here's our emergency plan. I'm not going to read it to you, but I will say you want a chain of command for who's making decisions, including me. Of course, Linda's the board president. Also, I have a rescue network of rescues, and the director of one of those rescues I've included here because that's someone I would trust to make decisions for our animals. And you might need all of you on board to help make decisions. And extreme heat and cold, we do have to consider that almost on a weekly basis. We do have a local shelter that we're able to use for drop off and pick up. So our animals are never outside, where it's hot or cold. Power failure, fire, we have several ideas here of a plan of where we would send our animals if my home had a fire or power failure. And don't forget the animals, but don't forget your medications and vaccines. If you had a power failure, you would hate to lose a lot of vaccines that could ruin. Also, have a contact list with all the phone numbers that you probably have those all on your phone, but you might need others to help you make contacts. In the event of a power failure during surgery, which has happened, I'm sure it happened with you, Linda, our veterinarians have headlamps for light, and they have battery operated clippers, because once those, we want that surgery to take place if it's safe to do so. And what if it happened in the middle of surgery? Those animals have been anesthetized, and we want them to safely finish their surgery. You have anything to add on that, Linda?
No, I think they can read over that and that's just kind of the way our contingency plan.
Right. Tornado or severe storm could happen in this part of the country for sure. And all of our volunteers know to take the animals inside the nearest shelter, whether that's our home, the vet clinic, animal shelter, or a rescue's home. Again, you need names and addresses for those. And here's our emergency plan supply list that we keep on hand in case we had to keep animals longer than just overnight. We keep all this on, at all times so that we could safely house those animals and also, feed and take care of them. Optional, we don't have this at this time, but the security cameras would be good. You could watch the animals if you weren't there. And Linda, tell me about a temperature alert that you could have on your phone. Tell us about that.
For do-it-yourselfers, security cameras are pretty cheap, and I bet a bunch of people listening have them at their homes. But they're very easy to put up in places where you monitor animals, and most of those also come with little, I use the Wisecam alert app, but I have temperature monitors in my garage in different places in my house, and they just alert me whether I'm there or not, if the temperature has gotten too hot or too cold for the animals.
Great idea. I learned something preparing this presentation that I want to install. So now on to the attributes of the ideal candidate for your new leader. Like we said, consider the emerging leaders in the organization. Hopefully you'll work with them long enough to know what skills they have and the attributes they have, but recruit for attitude. You can teach the skills, but you can't change people's attitude or personality. What are the attributes that are most important for your new leader? We looked at the list that you'll see on the next slide, and we decided communication skills is most important. They have to be able to get along and communicate with your vets, your donors, your volunteers. You don't want someone who's going to alienate the vets and run off your volunteers. Also, integrity, honesty, trust. They're going to be in control of your bank account. Are they caring, respectful to everyone? The owners, the people that call. Are they dependable? Do they do what they say they're going to do when they say they're going to do it? Because you'll alienate your veterinarians and your clinic staff if they cannot depend on you to have animals there at their appointment times or communicate when maybe there's been a cancellation. So make sure they share. Go ahead, Linda.
Sorry, Denise, I shouldn't have interrupted you. I was just going to say, in our group, we deal with the poor, and a lot of people with poor financial and with weak minds, weak backs. And there's a lot of judgmental attitude there at times, especially when the poor may not care for these pets or care about them the way that all of us attending this conference do. And so you've got to have volunteers and a director who can react with compassion and not contempt.
Yes, definitely, Linda. And again, communication. If you've had, communicating with those owners, also communicating with the clinic staff when you know there's a cancellation, to let them know as soon as possible and let them know what happened. Like Linda said, we have those who they don't have transportation. They got up to take their cat to the clinic and their car won't start, and they don't have anyone to help them. Make sure they share the mission and vision of the organization. Update your written job description. So you have a checklist for that. We'll talk about that also. You may not want to give them the entire job description when you start to recruit them. I think if Linda had given me the written job description, I would have stopped answering my phone. I can tell you, she needed 3 people to do the job she was doing.
Well, I tried to get 3 and I couldn't. So now Denise is doing the work of 3.
Well, with a lot of help, volunteers, and Linda's still on board, as we'll talk about. Those are some other attributes. They're all important, but we just picked out the critical ones we thought. So you want to invest time, interest, and training in those volunteers who appear to have those attributes that you want. Cross-train, rotate them through the various skill areas. Linda had me out trapping, watching Community Cat podcasts, certification videos, and reading. Also, practicing those new skills that I would need. She recorded client calls, and then I could listen to those at my leisure. Of course, asking the client for permission, and I could hear how she interacted with the clients, the questions she asked, the information she gave, and that was very helpful. Go with the previous director to vet clinics and on visits to recruit new vet clinics. Also, spay days. I went to spay days and rotated through all the stations because you never know if you might have one station that you didn't have anybody to volunteer for that station that day. You don't want to have to cancel a spay day because you don't have anyone to say do reversals of your anesthesia. So as a director who's boots on the ground like me, I have to be able to step in and do that. I also have to be able to step in and transport when I've had a transporter, at the last minute or the day before, and be able to transport. So I also like to have my volunteers that are interested in transporting ride with an experienced transporter. Some of our vet clinics are a little difficult to find in the rural areas with no signs on the roads or something like that. And just also for them to know how to safely transport those cats, how to label their carriers and traps, cover the traps so that the cats are less stressed. So your volunteers, you don't want them to get frustrated because they can't find the clinic or that the vet is upset with them about the way the cats were labeled or transported. So you have some expert advice from these resources here, as I've mentioned, United Spay Alliance, and also Alley Cat Allies. I had not mentioned them before. And you can see their picture of our volunteers at a spay day. We're very fortunate that we have very dedicated volunteers.
And I would add that one thing we talked about, hire for attitudes, you can train for skills. And over the past 30 years, I've found volunteers who had skills like nurses who could do IV reversals, that sort of thing, or injections, but the attitude was not there. We can train people to do an injection, but you can't, it's too hard to change the attitude. So look for attitudes first and then follow up with the skills.
Absolutely. Also that they share your mission and vision, and you don't want a volunteer who's would be very upset if a cat had to be humanely euthanized for the cat's benefit. But so we talked about volunteers with nursing experience, veterinary experience like vet techs, or someone with computer skills can be very helpful in your organization, whether they would become the new leader or just a very valued volunteer. Again, the people skills to work with all the owners, volunteers, etc. So collect as many recommendations and background checks about your potential new leader. Getting input from your board and your volunteers and your vet clinics, because many of us, most of us in the animal welfare world, we know each other. We have networked with other rescues and shelters, and you wouldn't want to alienate one of your key vets or volunteers or clinic staff because maybe that's someone they've worked with in the past and didn't have a good experience. So ask all those key people. Also, background checks, we recommend a formal background check. They're probably, I don't know, $25, $50 now, because you may think you know someone, but perhaps they have something in their background, some secret that you don't know about. You would not want to have someone leading your nonprofit that had a history of drug problems. You're around control medications in the vet clinics, or a problem with embezzling money, writing bad checks, or anything like that, because they'll have access to your cat's bank account. So, and like Linda said, keep a backup candidate in mind, because the person you had in mind may not work out. So what is the best path through the transition for your group? Like Linda said, big groups could afford a succession planning consultant or a leadership coach. But I know that was not in HARP's budget, and probably not in a lot of your budgets. Keep everyone informed. Share that succession and the contingency plan, both plans, with your volunteers. Be clear on the roles and assignments. Decide if is your current leader going to need a clean break, or are they going to continue to be involved? And research shows that involvement is usually beneficial to the organization. And they recommend the new leader working alongside the leader that's retiring. Linda, you want to talk about that a little bit, how we did that?
Yeah, it's you've got two choices when new leadership comes in. A clean break. Current leader ends on May the 31st, and the new one starts on June 1st. It's clean break. You don't see the old one again. But it turns out the research shows that it's generally more effective if the departing director or leader has continued involvement. It can lead to problems. It can lead to who's in charge here, who's on first, and people looking that way, who's doing what. But if you'll watch that carefully, I think that you'll find that you can surmount that. And I think it is good to just work together some rather than just trying to make a clean break in most cases. But you'll have to decide for your organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know for us, Linda was my coach. She was there for challenging situations. We scheduled phone calls early on. It was every week. Sometimes we'd meet in person for coffee or lunch. But, what's going on? What questions do you have? She would remind me of upcoming deadlines or so forth. And that was very helpful. It was very encouraging to me, too. Your new leader needs a lot of encouragement that they're doing a good job, and
absolutely,
and that was so helpful. Like she said, there could be conflicts, and I think just communication is key here. Also, respect for the new leader, outgoing leader. And I know I would ask Linda or tell her I was planning something. And she would tell me, well, I wouldn't do that. And this is why, this is what happened when I tried that in the past. And, but if you think you can make that work, or that won't happen with you in this situation, then go for it. And I support you. So just a lot of respect, and is really important there. You want to plan to strengthen ties with your key donors and your grant makers, because they may be loyal to the current leader. They could be unsettled by the change. We'll talk about that. You need tact, empathy, clear communication, like I said.
I'm sorry, Denise, let me add there that was one thing that I did find. We had several what I would call benefactors, people who are very generous supporters. And when I started making the succession plan, I called each one of these benefactors and spoke to them about my plans to step down and for you to come in. I talked very positively about how Denise, what her background was, etc. but I do know that they were all a little bit concerned about it, and every single one of them was mostly concerned that their money was not going to be spent, that we would not be good shepherds of it. So do reassure them that you'll continue to be good shepherds of the money. And, and I've stayed around on the money for a year or two after Denise really took over, so that I could, make good on that promise. Yeah, I'm watching the money, if everything's okay. And the donors have finally settled down and are comfortable with that. The veterinarians, there were some veterinarians, their first thing again was the money. Will I be paid on time? Plenty of vets have been stiffed by plenty of rescue and spay neuter groups on the fees, and that's what's, well, are the bills going to still get paid? Yes, they are. So just kind of plan for people to get nervous about where their money is going to, and when the money's going to be coming in.
Right. Also, if your new director that's coming in has been a volunteer in the past and they've met the vets, they've helped with spay neuter, they've transported, then they've started a relationship with that person. And I think that helped, because when Linda was talking about me taking over as director, I wasn't a stranger to them. They already knew me. And so working together, old and new director can really help the organization flourish. So here's a new leader checklist. You may have some additional ones. Some of these might not apply to you, but this is a good list to start with. Many things to think about. And one thing under spreadsheets, you have your contact list, your important information about your donors. You would want to pass along anything important to your significant donors. Lynn, do you want to talk about anything specific on the donors that you told me about?
Yeah, and I think what we did, and Denise can tell you this, we had one donor, I was not aware of this, she was a new donor, a benefactor, but she did not, once Denise took over, she said, don't send me pictures of cats, because I would often send with the thank you note pictures of cats that she had helped, charming pictures, not any of suffering cats, but still she just did not, it hurt her heart too much. And so Denise does not ever send her pictures of cats. And what you can do with that is we all have a phone, a smartphone with a contact list, and you've probably got a list of donors or benefactors. Denise keeps a donor database. You can put on there notes that just in case something happens to you today, that the next person who has to come in and take over knows, don't send Miss Roberts cat pictures. Do send this person, do give this person a personal call immediately upon getting a donation. You can put those things in your notes on your contact list. So they need to know that. You need to always act like, well, what if I'm not here tomorrow? What if? Who can take over?
Right. Also, we have we have donors who have specific. They like to donate to a matching grant, so you want to make sure you contact them when you have a matching grant, or they have a real heart for feral cats, and
Yeah.
if you have a colony that you need help with, they want to know so they can help you with that. Your website maintenance, social media accounts, those, passwords and so forth, bank accounts, and you always want to have a backup for death or disability, just like Linda said. What if I can't write a check to pay that vet on time? There needs to be someone else on that bank account that you trust, maybe someone on your board, a second person that could write a check and keep everything going. Now, you'll need a specific orientation for your nonprofit. So this is for us and might apply to those of you who do spay neuter. These are all the different orientation checklist for a new leader coming in. Oh, and I do want to say here for grant writing, make sure you give the new leader hard copies and electronic copies of grants you've written in the past. As you know, sometimes you can copy and paste from one grant to the other or from one year to the other. And that you don't want them spending a lot of time reinventing the wheel there. Your available resources we've talked about. Also, your veterinarians are experts, and your local rescue groups can be good resources for them. Plan ways to introduce the new leader to the board, benefactors, vendors, volunteers, rescues, vets, and clinic staff. There's one of our longest time vet that's helped us since she was in vet school, and she's now celebrating her 20th anniversary.
Yeah, this is Dr. Monica Schoeneck. She came and helped me in 1997, 1998, 1999 as a veterinary student and is still with us. So we just love her.
Yeah, so she's one of our key vets that I'm sure she was probably the first person Linda talked to about me. I had been there as a volunteer at her spay days that we do. We do 30 cats as often as she'll let us do them on the weekend with an all volunteer staff. So you want to strengthen those relationships, explain your handover strategy. Like Linda said, reassure them about the bills and the money. Communicate the reason for the succession and introduce the new leader, preferably in person if possible, where you would make an appointment during lunch, maybe take the vet to lunch or lunch for the staff or take them some snacks. We like to do that when we can, when they're not busy. If that's not possible, I know Linda wrote letters explaining about her retirement and telling them about me. Also, you could do a video call or just a phone call. Have new business cards for the new leader to give out so they'll know how to get in touch with them. Update them regularly. Emphasize the benefits and opportunities that's going to come along with the new leadership. And like we said, the former leader staying involved definitely eases the transition. So you can refine or focus your mission objectives under the new leadership. Can your mission be expanded? Can you fix more animals? And that's what happened with HARP. With Linda, trying to stay in the background as much as she can, but she's still been very helpful. She redesigned the website once she didn't have the day-to-day activities of directing HARP. She came up with an online form that our clients can fill out. Just working together, we've been able to do more than we could separately. We have new ways to pay. She created QR codes. I linked Venmo and Cash App to a second bank account that has very little money in it because I was worried about those apps having access to your big bank account. So that's just a little word to the wise. You can maybe explore more grants. Linda still helps with grants, proofing grants. She'll write some sometimes when she knows I'm super busy, and we're just able to do more together. Maybe you can expand your network. A new leader is going to have a different set of friends and acquaintances. So I've been able to recruit new volunteers. We work with rescues that help us in spay day, take a lot of the kittens we find. And also we've been able to recruit new vet clinics. Linda's recruited one, I've recruited 2 or 3. And so we do have the donor software, Linda said, where I can send out newsletters, email and text blast, and have donation tracking. So if your previous leader can stay involved at whatever level they want to, that can really help you expand your mission. Evaluate progress regularly, reassessing the new leadership during and after the transition, keeping everyone informed, and inviting feedback from your stakeholders discreetly. And let Linda tell you about how she did that behind my back.
Well, and Denise just found out about that this week, but I just went behind as Denise was starting, when she was just working as a volunteer, and then as she moved into the director position, I just asked our vets and asked other volunteers, how's it going with Denise? You enjoying working with her? you know, just not accusatory, just a how's it going, friendly how's it going. And of course, all I ever got was, yeah, it's great, it's fine, no problems. Yeah, but you do need to kind of follow up, and then, you know, use that feedback as you can.
Right, and you want to, if you do have some feedback to share, of course, always lead with the positive comments, always give them the positive. If you do have something negative, you want to share that tactfully, maybe try to find a way to bring it up without telling the new leader that someone, you know, tattled on them. But, you know, you could say, you know, I don't know if I ever told you that maybe if this happens, you should do X, Y, or Z. Because, you know, the new leader could have a different approach. You may have to tell your vets or volunteers, well, you know, that's how Denise is going to do it now, and I think that's okay. Or I'll talk to her about it, whatever you need to do. But just be very careful, very tactful, very diplomatic. If there's some insignificant comments, they just don't like exactly the way they're doing things, you just try to smooth that over and maybe not tell the new director if you don't think it's going to cause a problem. You know, is it something significant or not? Okay, anything else you want to add, Linda, before we go to questions?
One thing that we had, the slide before last, was that this is an arduous, make no mistake about it, it's an arduous process. And for all of those of you who are struggling just to get cats fixed or pets fixed, adding this to your to-do list may seem daunting, but it is critical, it is important. And the rainbow, or the pot of gold at the end of the storm, the rainbow, is that you could, I mean, think of the possibilities. You get new blood in there, you get new excitement, you get new energy, you get new interest. Denise has doubled the number of cats that I was getting done. She's expanded the network, et cetera, which she talked about. So there's a lot of potential for benefit for the cats and the dogs and the pets that we're trying to help through this. So if you can just stick it out, there's really, you've got a lot of potential for success and improvement.
So something I was thinking about, I mean, you mentioned how arduous it is. Can you just, I guess, what was the timeline for you guys from, like, I guess Linda kind of realizing I want to take a step back to bringing Denise on board, working side by side? Linda, I know you're still involved, you know, so all together, like at a high view, like what's the timeline for, you know, the succession
It was
planning?
about 5 years, almost 6 ago, when I started thinking, you know, I need to start planning about this. In 2020, I started getting a little bit more serious about it. In 2021 is when we really started working on it. And by 2022, we had Denise on board and up and running. And I think we formally elected you as director by 2023, maybe. But it was a
No, I
long
think
2022.
22, I believe.
Yeah, so we started, you know, kind of unofficially 2019, 2020, and then on up to from there. So it's a long-term process.
It could have been done faster, but, you know, Linda was, you know, still wanting to stay involved, and she was giving me she gave me the phone calls and the appointments, and then she gave me, you know,
Yeah,
before she gave me the bank account, she gave me a grant to write, you know.
yeah, Denise, we didn't have a clean break or even anything like that. We went through it very gradually. She took on more and more responsibility as she felt like she was learning the ropes and had her sea legs.
And what has been the role of like your board of directors in this process? Is there a part for them to play as well?
If you have an active board, yes. We do have a board of directors, of course, as any nonprofit and corporation is expected to have. Lots of people have, you know, much more time for that. I had a tendency to say, I'd rather go trap some cats than schedule a board meeting. But yeah, I did check in with board members, and we're trying at this time right now to expand the board, you know, even as we speak.
The board did
Denise,
vote on me. Yes, they voted on me, officially as director.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And Linda Still is the president of the board.
and so I'm wondering, Denise, because there is such a long history with HARP and Linda at the helm, what was that experience like for you stepping into that role and trying to honor what was successful for HARP in the past, but then also kind of put your own spin on it? And like Linda said, you've been able to make some changes that have taken HARP in a positive direction. So like, how was that to navigate?
Well, it was some big shoes to fill to do what Linda did and maintain the mission. A lot of times when I'm thinking about what to do, I think about what would Linda do, and if I don't know, I'll send her a text or a call. But I just, I guess that's the main thing is just to, what is our mission? What do I want to accomplish? And to maintain, spay and neuter. That's our number one mission. That's what we have to do to control overpopulation and suffering. And then anything else that I can expand into, rescuing kittens from a client and getting them to a rescue, or helping cats that have, injuries or illnesses, that has to be secondary to our main mission.
And as far as, I mean, you guys have done this, so we're going to go ahead and learn from you. But like, what were like the challenges? Like, if there are pitfalls for people to avoid, like if you could give like your top one or maybe two, three, like pitfalls to avoid for anyone who's about to take this on.
I think I would say make sure that the person or people that you're looking at as potential replacements or leaders share your vision. In the animal welfare world, there are so many different positions, opinions, and it's almost, people have very strong opinions on whether or not we should spay a pregnant cat, whether or not a tiny kitten, feral kitten, can be returned to a colony or should be euthanized, or when there's no, there's just so many different positions. And if you're not in sync with that person's values, then conflict is going to be unavoidable. And these are values that all of us in animal welfare hold very strongly and feel very strongly about, and a lot of us aren't very flexible on those things. So I mean, there are people who would say, well, I've got to save them all, everybody, and yet we know that's not possible. So you've got to find somebody, you've got to find, most of all, that your views align.
That's true. I would also say, communication, conflicts between the outgoing and the new leader, just communication and respect. Linda respected if I wanted to go a different direction or do something. Maybe that's not what she would have done, but it was still in alignment with our mission and vision. And so she respected that, not to take things personally. I think, that would be a big pitfall, not being respectful of each other's opinion and not communicating with both of us involved. We have to communicate who is doing what so that we don't overlap or, do something that would offend someone.
And so I know you guys had this very thoughtful process, and you've worked through it and probably are still working through it in some ways. But what if there is an organization that is just faced with that unexpected sudden loss of leadership? Is there a place that you would recommend for them to start and work through this?
In my situation, my husband died very suddenly and unexpectedly in 2014, just days before a big major spay day. He was a major volunteer, the mobile units here at our house. So it was a very difficult time. And I mean, it just fried my brain. It was so unexpected. But I had a very good volunteer who'd been working with me for then about 12 years. And after things settled for a little while, then she said, I tell you what, if you can just write the checks, I'll keep things going until you can feel better. So if you've got somebody like that, gosh, what a blessing that is if you do. But it's time to start thinking about that right now. It's time today to start thinking about that. And I hope when y'all go into work tomorrow that you'll be, or when you start back to volunteering tomorrow, that you'll be thinking about who could take this on, because it's the cats who are going to lose if we can't keep going. The pets.
Absolutely.
True.
All right. Well, any final thoughts for folks as we head off, and if, final wisdom to impart as we begin to think about our succession planning?
Well, like Linda said, it's just you want your mission to go forward. You want to expand your network. Watch for the talent out there that you could use, and keep your eye on the prize, which is spaying and neutering as many cats as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you all for listening. And Bree and Esther, thank you for putting this together. Everybody who's worked so hard on it, we appreciate it.
Thank you all for your attendance.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Linda, Denise. You guys have a fantastic organization and are a fantastic example of handing over the reins strategically to keep your program and your mission alive.